They warned you that betrayers, the economy, and politics were all fronts in the global struggle. Internal struggles, however, have never ended. And the worst kind of battle is the one in which you have no idea who your enemies are. The moment you open your eyes in the morning, your mind begins to chatter, pass judgment, cast doubt, and mumble your limitations even before you get out of bed. The question of whose voice it is never even crosses your mind. You can't claim it as your own. Not who you really are. Not the one who was born with a voice. Alongside you. Indestructible, independent, inquisitive, and wild. Such a voice had been buried, hidden beneath a myriad of others. You heard your instructor tell you to take a seat. This is the mother's or father's voice who felt helpless in the face of an abstraction. A societal voice that deemed your value dependent on your level of silence, obedience, and conformity. The voice of the media, religious institutions, and individuals whose own struggles they're trying to reflect in your mirror. Your mind is now a haunted place. Feelings of shame, failure, and never-ending regret linger in your mind like specters. Enough. You think they're your ideas, but in reality, they're just long-suppressed anxieties that have been passed down through the centuries like a curse. According to Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In this case, fate wasn't involved. I am a computer programmer. It needs to be unlearned now. Why? Because your true, everlasting self is unafraid, unconfused, and unimpressed. That inner voice that tells you to flee, hide, or remain silent. You are continuing to nurture that planted voice. However, you were. I never intended to grow weeds for the benefit of others. You were supposed to be unbridled, unpredictable, and unapologetic. Your internal monologue is not the issue. You should not assume ownership of every thought that enters your mind. Additionally, you should be aware of the distinction immediately. Failing to do so may lead you to base your life decisions on the incorrect identity. Climbing ladders that dangle from walls won't bring you home. Who you marry will reflect your trauma, not who you really are. Your self-esteem will be nourished by the tasks you take, but your inner being, it will all work out in the end. Then you will condense. Plus, you'll be grinning the whole time because the voice told you to be thankful even for crumbs. The person speaking in that voice is not telling the truth. Confrontation is the initial stride towards liberation. Frame of mind. You are not a motivational poster with your mindset. This is not a quote for Instagram or a seminar for the weekend. You can think of it as your OS. More often than not, people's systems are flawed. They are based on the tenets of scarcity and guilt, which in turn lead to the belief that hardship is necessary for success, that love is gained through sacrifice, and that happiness must be worked for. While that may not. Way of thinking. You are enslaved in your mind. Jung forewarned us. In an attempt to evade their inner demons, people will resort to any ridiculous means necessary. Why? Because confronting your innermost being also means confronting your deceitful and compromised nature. Because of all the masks you've donned, you no longer recognize your own face. You don't have to change into someone else to change your thinking. It's about getting back to your roots, about being yourself before other people dictated you who to be. Removing ideas that were never yours to begin with is the key. The focus is on igniting stories and penning them with your own blood and hands. This is the new beginning. Additionally, the ego will squawk, which is uncomfortable. The deceitful opinions will clash. Who do you think you are? They'll ask and then add. You've changed, and that's true. Since you have made the conscious decision to no longer allow mental parasites to reside in your head. Stop being a reverberation of other people's pain. Expectations that are unrelated to your objective will no longer control you. You cut off all communication with a manipulative voice that feeds off your anxiety. Moral conviction. Consider believe the root of a person's attitude like soil. Furthermore, you did not choose most of your views. Rather, they were planted in you. No one ever told you that you were too much or too little when you were born. That is something you have mastered. You were told to be quiet about your brilliance, to downplay your fire, and to apologize for just being yourself by someone. inside the borders of a life that was never meant for your type of spirit. They told you to color. Faith is strong because it doesn't necessitate evidence. Yes, it makes it. Your perspective is shaped by your beliefs. Any belief system can be supported by evidence. Your belief in your own unworthiness will cause you to ruin any gift that comes your way. When kindness comes knocking, you won't recognize it because you think the world is harsh. People who validate your shattered self-perception will be the ones you attract. Therefore, the issue is not truthfulness. Who taught you to believe what you believe? And what are your beliefs? The system needs to be rewired if the answer is pain. Using negative language instead of positive. Honesty. With precision. Unseen damage cannot be repaired. Nothing can be altered if you refuse to identify it. Peace of mind is not clarity. This is an argument. Sitting in the dark and saying things like, I am not okay, but I am not broken. I'm not perfect, but I am powerful. I have listened to lies, but I will not obey them anymore. In order to find clarity, you have to cut through all the noise until you can hear only your voice. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of culture, and certainly not the voice of the person who tried to break you and call it love. You can't build what you can't see. And most people don't lack potential. They lack vision. They can't see themselves as free, so they stay in cages. They can't see themselves as loud, so they chase after crumbs. And when you're clear, you stop begging for permission, outsourcing your decisions, and explaining your boundaries. You realize you owe it to yourself, not the world, to have peace, leadership, so they blindly follow orders. Your future is built upon your vision, which is more of a frequency than a fantasy. Rather than manifesting what you want, you manifest what you are willing to become. Rather than secretly fantasizing about a life, you should fight for it in silence and build it with discipline. Discipline is the language of self-respect, the evidence that you have stopped negotiating with those who want you to stay small. Discipline doesn't say, I feel like it. Rather, it says, I am not going to let you feel like it. It says, I decided, and decisions change lives. Discipline builds momentum, which in turn creates identity, and identity is the key to breaking the cycle of your previous actions. Healing isn't just thinking about it, it's moving. Your body holds your trauma, so your soul demands that you leave the room, the relationship, and the identity that doesn't fit anymore. You can't just sit it out. You have to act it out, no matter how shaky your legs or hands are. Courage is not the absence of fear, but rebellion in the presence of it. And when you move, speak, decide, refuse to sit quietly anymore, the false voices begin to die. Then the real voice, the original, ancient one, returns, not the loudest voice, but the deepest, the one that doesn't shout but shakes the ground when it whispers. Another name for gratitude is strength, not weakness. Gratitude isn't a soft word. It's a weapon when forged in pain. It's the roar that says, even after all that tried to bury me, I still found something sacred in the dirt. It's the refusal to let bitterness become your identity. Gratitude isn't about comfort. It's about clarity. The ability to say, this didn't go how I wanted, but it went how I needed. That heartbreak taught me boundaries. That failure taught me focus. That silence taught me to speak. Gratitude is about clarity, not approval of your. When you rise from suffering, you claim authority. Being grateful removes the blade from your hand. You stop stabbing yourself with what happened. Reliving the same chapter and pretending you're stuck creates an illusion of being stuck. The truth is that you're just attached. But when you can bless the lesson and release the wound, you break the chain. You exit the loop and become unshakable. Undefeasibility is yours. Adaptability is your strength. Surviving doesn't necessarily mean being the strongest or smartest person. It means being the most adaptive. While the ego fights change, the soul grows through it. Every setback, every detour, every betrayal is an opportunity for initiation. Life isn't out to destroy you, but to shape you. Let go of the parts of you that were never real so that what is real can finally breathe. You won't succeed in life by clinging. You won't find peace by controlling. You won't discover purpose by forcing. Instead, you'll discover it when you flow with energy. When you let go, you'll find it. You find your true self when you fearlessly change directions, not when you cling desperately to an outdated version of yourself. Adaptability is the ability to change with the times without compromising your principles or identity. It's about evolving without betraying your principles, moving forward with purpose, and not trying to outmuscle the storm. Being resilient isn't about being tough. Becoming resilient is not about being numb or acting as if everything is fine. Rather, it is about remembering who you are when everyone else has forgotten you. It is about standing in the rubble of what you believed you needed and saying, "I'm still here and I still want more." Resilience is a form of spiritual rebellion. It is about choosing to love again after being betrayed, trying again after failing, and trusting yourself again after ignoring your intuition. Rather than avoiding adversity, you must walk through it in order to build resilience. Wake up. Instead of pleading for help or hoping that someone will come to your rescue, you should become the force that doesn't need anyone's permission to survive. Resilience states, "I heard the voice that told me to give up. No one checked in, and I could hear it. Even though I knew I had failed, I still came. I choose to do it, not because I was forced to." Nobody can take that kind of power. Educating oneself. A dead mind is one that believes it knows everything. A living soul is one that hungers for the truth. Being correct is not the point of learning. Being authentic is key. Interesting, receptive, and amenable to instruction. A lot of folks just protect instead of learning. They argue for the limits that they have. Their pain is something they fight for. They stand up for the thoughts running through their heads because they have taken them at face value. But real learning is taking things apart. What really matters is having the guts to admit, maybe I was wrong. Maybe there's more. Maybe the version of reality I've been living was just survival, not freedom. Learning isn't about cramming for tests and exams. Feelings run deep. That's the spiritual side of it. It is a hands-on. Being someone for a long time teaches you not to be yourself. What you discover. Resisting what you desire by clinging to it until it consumes you. After being denied enough times, you eventually learn to take what is rightfully yours without apologizing. Not fixing yourself, but being yourself is what you commit to when you study. Coming into your own, bringing everything together. Integration, not knowledge alone, is what heals. It exemplifies knowledge. Reading, meditating, going on retreats, and quoting Jung are all viable options. When you return home and betray yourself once more, though, it will all be for naught. The power to learn is limitless. Unity is strength. When your deeds begin to reflect your words, you have integrated. As soon as you stop sacrificing who you are in order to fit in, you have integrated. Your fear of rejection must be overcome by your no before you can integrate. When your limits are clear and concise, you've integrated. Integration is happening all the time. It's more than just a way of life. It's a holy vow to always be the person you are now, rather than the one you have to be to live. Being flawless is not required of you. You're under no obligation to know everything. Honesty is all that's required. Brave enough to pursue your truth, no matter how terrifying it may be, since that is the path to your power. At long last, waking up. The inner monologue that formerly filled you with terror, embarrassment, and the poison of others who failed to see your value will eventually fade into oblivion. It is furious. Vision is communicated. What says is true. The commotion will cease the day you awaken. Not because there's less noise, but because you're more powerful. The blunders ceased. Each person's opinion matters. When your thoughts weren't grounded in your highest self, you cut them off. You severed ties with the supernatural. Something fresh was heard while they were not there. Forged in fire, you remember why you came here. You don't merely survive the dark. You construct light inside of it. This is you, the genuine you, not the programmed, afraid, or scaredy-pants version of yourself. Pay close attention. There are certain thoughts that aren't. Best regards. As soon as you understand that becoming is more important than obeying, everything changes. There is no grand entrance, debate, fireworks, or parting letters. Rather, it begins subtly. A soft murmur marks the beginning. a soft murmur that begins, "This is no longer me." Your doubts are understandable at first. Disregard it. When you're about to yell, you crack a smile. To express disapproval, you nod. Because it feels like betraying your loved ones to leave behind everything you've ever known as home, no matter how much it hurts. But you know it in your heart. There was a time when all you wanted to do was be agreeable, to fit in, to be understood, and to avoid conflict. Additionally, that version is currently on its last legs. This isn't because you're bitter or resentful. Rather, it's because a part of you has outgrown its former sanctuary. Moving on from individuals isn't about being better than them. It all comes down to harmony. The rooms where you learn to be quiet for survival, where you learn to shrink for love, and where you learn to negotiate your limits no longer accommodate the person you are becoming. Easy access. True evolution never makes itself known. Therefore, there's no need to describe it. All it does is move. And those who are only ever able to love you despite your dysfunction will sense it when you depart from soul, clarity, and deep-seated conviction. They will sense the change. You ceased apologizing, which is more significant than anything you said. Jokes that put you down stopped making you chuckle. You should quit lowering your standards to appease their fears. You need to quit being such a contortionist of emotions. Bending, just, is to receive an invitation. No words will be spoken, but it will be felt. Their offense is that you are free. They can't help but think about all the times they've put their personal comfort before the truth, even though it's not always wrong. A state of euphoria known as psychological rebirth occurs when the spirit takes control of one's life. And rebirth is unabashed, unhinged, and unclean. It is indifferent to the timetable you have set. It doesn't care if your friends and family think it's cool. It hits like an unexpected storm, clearing the air of clarity that was once there, but is now clouded. Require approval. The crisis is not elation. Everything that was untrue has crumbled. Everyone around you will start to freak out as soon as that collapse starts. Your shattering is a sign of liberation, not fragility. A lot of people will tell you things like, you've changed, that you're distant, that you've become too much or not enough, but what they really mean is, I can't control you anymore. You've outgrown the dynamic where you carry the emotional weight of relationships built on imbalance. In other words, they want you to continue saying yes to things that are slowly killing you. If you're, people conflate lack of speech with consent. No more. That's not anger. Awake you are. These days, mindset is only a word. You're on the offensive here. Why? Because the battle you wage within your own mind is the greatest battle you will ever face. That one that separates the you that they taught from the one that's attempting to escape. Gaining acclimatization to discomfort is a prerequisite to victory in that conflict. Simply put, growth isn't fun, because it hurts to leave loved ones behind. Because transitioning into a new identity feels like a symphony of loss and release at the middle of your chest area. Even so, you stand up, change your position, you readjust. Quietly you go about your task. Plus, you sit back and let the outcomes do the talking. Since genuine evolutionists don't feel the need to persuade others, all they do is become. Becoming, by its very nature, causes separation. Not that I'm spiteful or anything. I just think frequency speaks for itself. You become more subdued while interacting with others who reside on the surface as you delve deeper into your inner self. The foundation of your future is your belief in it, not beliefs handed to you, not long-held convictions. Through the suffering of those who came before us, not ideologies mumbled by ineffective structures. The convictions you have, the ones you work for, the ones you shape with your own hands, the ones you show by your actions rather than your words. A person's actual life mirrors the change in their views. Your perspective will shift. People who want a watered-down version of you won't be able to keep you around for much longer. When people are determined to misunderstand you, there's no need in trying to prove yourself to them. Having faith leads to seeing things clearly. Relationships founded on ambiguity perish when clarity is introduced. You're going to. When something doesn't quite fit, you may feel it deep within. This time, you won't be able to convince yourself otherwise. You'll just stroll along quietly and dignifiedly. Simply said, conflict isn't necessary for progress every time. Moving forward fearlessly is sometimes all that's needed. You're sharpened by clarity. It has no effect on your volume. It sanitizes you. When you know the answer, there's no need to debate. You're not too dramatic. If you don't intend to go, don't try to bring other people along. Simply be yourself and let your energy speak volumes. Not everyone is going to. Move closer. Some of them will go. Clarity breeds separation, so let both take place. It delineates the genuine from the staged. It distinguishes between emotional dependence and mutual growth. It is the dividing line between those who supported your growth and others who are content to see you remain a shrink. Furthermore, you will no longer be permitted. Digestibility wasn't your birthright. Undeniable is how you were born. No lightning bolt can bring purpose. By removing it, its true nature becomes apparent. As soon as the din dies down, as soon as the acting ceases, once you cut ties with those who sapped your energy, you'll start to feel its effects. Beneath the surface of all you believed to be important was a subtle rhythm, a steady beat that draws you in, not because it's louder, but because it's more genuine. Becoming someone else is not what purpose is asking of you. You are compelled to release all that you were never meant to hold on to. Strip away all the masks, aliases, borrowed ideas, and false hopes until you're exposed as an authentic, unapologetic, and powerful individual. Additionally, in the event that when you make that your permanent home, you start to cause chaos. Being present with a purpose reveals all the false things surrounding it. Not because you're attempting to be anything other than yourself. Your self-abandonment will have the greatest impact on those who were most benefited by it. Your boundaries will make them flinch. They will disregard your lucidity. When you finally put yourself first, they will say you're being selfish. However, you should give them the opportunity to express themselves, as being hurt by your healing is the surest sign of insecurity. A self-respecting person practices discipline. That isn't. Concerning limitations. Keeping in mind and demonstrating the importance of what truly matters is key. You are recovering territory with every choice you make. Getting out of bed when it would be simpler to stay in. Saying no when in the past you would have said yes, and valuing your own energy instead of trading it for affirmation crumbs. Those who are driven by outside forces should not attempt to discipline others. For those who have already made up their minds, even though it doesn't yell, conviction carries itself with dignity. Dismissals are muzzled by that burden. The room is clear by that weight. The total puts distance between you and those who could only show their devotion in times of crisis. However, there is no longer any necessity for it. The decision was yours. Making a decision entails risk since it allows you to depart without returning. Taking action connects your intentions to your actualization. It's a place where one's very essence is challenged, to the point where your idea is formalized into a legally binding agreement. Whatever you do, no matter how unsure you are, whatever you make, no matter who is looking, whatever you say, no matter how trembling your voice is, you are choosing to stay committed to the future. An audience is unnecessary for such type of activity. The need for alignment arises from the fact that when one is aligned, the clamor and applause fade into the background, and one's power is subtly assured. This is the silent way to grow up from people. You persist in prioritizing doing rather than explaining, directing rather than diversion, and embodying rather than justifying. The distance is built by your judgments. As time goes on, they see that you no longer. Accompanying them on foot, you remain still. No one heard you yell. You got up and rolled. An attitude of gratitude serves as a map for the kindness they demonstrated rather than the gifts they bestowed. You were shown worthy with each treachery. With each firing, you honed your focus, and with each meaningless chat, you learned what you will never again put up with. Once you outgrow them, you won't be sorry, because being grateful does not entail remaining. You respect them and then let go of them. It denotes being able to see clearly without becoming stuck. The bridge is appreciated for carrying you across. Afterwards, no longer rely on it. Rage doesn't make you burn it. You allow it to fade away with ease. Because genuine progress does not breed animosity. It just blocks access. Resilience is not defined by enduring adversity. Being unapologetic, focused, and impossible to manipulate is all about becoming fire. The fact that another person is unable to manage your evolution is no reason to give up. Your lack of response is puzzling. You are trying to be too clever. You openly acknowledge its nature. You carry yourself with an air of confidence. Reason being, those who feel under danger from. Your personal development has consistently prioritized ease over truth, and you no longer give up your serenity in exchange for acceptance. If you want love, you have to stop changing who you are. You can't keep the peace by bleeding stealthily anymore. Your silence speaks volumes, and the revolution begins with your quiet. Being who you are now is more important than your past. When all illusions have crumbled, it's about who you choose to stay. It still needs fixing. People do not inherit it. It changes throughout time. A new agreement is rewritten with each passing moment. It's a pact with your very essence. Everything you do is in harmony with the truth, which you are no longer obligated to prove. You will discover contentment when you release your urge to be loved. Freedom is yours when you release the urge to be understood. When you stop pretending and start being yourself, no one can touch you. The reason is not that no one can get to you, but rather that no one can mislead you any longer. The room is trembled by this unseen force. Not the showmanship, not the appearance, but rather being in the company of someone who has accepted and moved past there. Who there to the point that they stop trying to please other people and start doing it all on their own. Without uttering a word, you long to surpass others. Get so firmly planted in your being that describing it seems like going backwards. Get so firmly planted in your vision that you no longer care about criticism. When you have a solid foundation within yourself, outside influences fade into the background. When you encounter a version of yourself that stops negotiating who you are in order to fit in, that's when you encounter the unpredictable, undefined, unknowable version that they can't. Alter the version of yourself that they no longer explain. What they represent is, you can be noticed without making an effort. Demonstrating your evolution is unnecessary. Maintaining a safe distance is not necessary. You aren't far away. Your status has been enhanced. You are radiant, not chilly. You are dominant. You aren't quiet. Those who are unable to communicate with you were never intended to accompany you in this form. Permit them to mess up. Permit them to reminisce. Just grin and let them say you've changed. You no longer practiced how valuable you are within rooms devoid of mirrors. You stopped presenting a toned-down version of yourself in order to be accepted. You finally stopped letting meaningless chats take up too much of your time. There was no sound as you departed. There was no scene when you left. Quietly, you surpassed them. True change doesn't necessitate being seen. It shifts of its own will. Those who have done the inner work will notice your new way of walking, different in weight, rhythm, and gravity. You opt not to pursue energy. Repetition is the key to attracting what you desire. You exude clarity rather than seeking answers. You exude completeness rather than clinging to affection. You come to understand that losing people was never the point of this journey as you keep climbing. A profound self-discovery was the central theme, which meant that one could no longer pretend to be someone else. Losing one's performance veneer was the goal. Selecting tranquility above closeness was the central theme. Lest you cling to people who could only ever hold your broken pieces, that was the message. Plus, there's no longer any reason to part ways since. Their expectations of closure were dashed by the deafening quiet. Your presence is now a veritable testimonial. I still wish you well, but I'm not going to change to fit in anymore. I'm still here, but I'm not the same. I love you, but I won't shrink to fit in. That's how you grow up without ever speaking a word to them.